Hey there, folks. It's now time for yet another industry interview, and today's today's man on the hot seat is a name that you've heard before. We have Erik Johnson from the Indiebros back again to kind of continue the chatter we were having the last time, only this time with a bit more focus. As you can see on your screen here, we have poor Neko-chan that has managed to get a bath in the cold. She's not entirely sure what to do with this at this point. The bath is just evil.
Should we see her here in the hangout?
No. It's just a thing here on the recording. Sorry about that. I thought I'd made that clear already. But this one actually has more to do with a game that I made many moons ago with a small team. Mobile Food Madness. We got Zaxter to play it a while. Zaxter played it on stream on one of our streams a couple of years ago, and it was absolutely hilarious. Ooh, typings. So, Erik, how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing well, Don. Thanks for having me back.
Not a problem. All day, every day, man. I actually, believe it or not, I actually enjoy these interviews. I'm pretty sure Kitty does too.
Yes, they are super fun.
I have a great time. I would hope we wouldn't get together if we were having a bad time. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that would be pretty suck. So let's start at the beginning. I sent you a copy of Mobile Food Madness a couple of weeks ago. It was last month or late August, early September sometime. Took you a little bit to get around to it. So what'd you think of it?
Classic, free, enjoyable adventure game with your choose your options. The mechanic with the purchasing, like the looking at the was it newspaper, I believe?
It's a catalog. It's a catalog.
Right.
Yeah.
The catalog, right? The catalog. I thought that was something that once I clicked into, I was going, oh yeah, okay, and I kind of reference this and move through the game a little bit better. I have questions like why the name mobile in Mobile Food Madness, because that kind of lends to me thinking that it's a mobile game, and maybe it was, maybe it is, but
it is not. It could be made a mobile game in seconds. I could actually put together an APK for it in no time flat. The fact is the food itself is mobile. It's swimming.
Right, and so the business side in my head goes red flag. Like maybe we should call it something else other than mobile, because mobile means something different to a lot of people in the current market.
Well, when you think about it, I put this game together back in 2011.
Oh yeah, and this is not a criticism of what you have done, but rather if we were looking at this as a 2018 upcoming release, that was the lens I was saying I was going through there.
Oh no, I was just saying this is that what I was doing was I realized the lens that you're working through. I was just looking at, well, it's been a lot of changes in the way the world works between 2011 and now. I can see where he's coming from there.
Right.
Yeah,
and so
valid.
Mobile,
right, it would just be like, hey, let's update the name or something if we were looking at this from the idea of a re-release or something along those lines. But it's all about the messaging and the packaging nowadays when you put on your Steam store page or your description or whatever people are coming across on your website.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I actually had a lot of fun doing this. I was the primary writer, and I laid out exactly how the design would work, and then I had a whole bunch of people that implemented it. I was never a big fan of the backgrounds, but I didn't have enough time to get somebody that could do them properly.
Right.
Kind of a thing. And I'd have to do that anyway at this point. But it was all put together in RentPie during the month of March 2011.
So yeah, a good 7.5 years ago. Where's the time gone, right? And then
I don't know. It ran away.
Yeah, and to me it was the classic, fun pick up free fun game that when I ran through, you pointed out I was probably going to run into trouble with the pond sequence, and I did. And
everybody runs into that.
But
Yeah.
it just kind of it's a classic. It's a classic thing in adventure games where you're just hitting your head against a wall for a couple of times, and you're going, wait, I'm not really thinking cerebral, in a cerebral manner or in a way that is really going to benefit getting past this point. I'm just kind of, so that was when the catalog, that was like the higher thought was use the catalog and, refer to those items and things of that sort. Once I just, accessed the areas a few times and observed how that went.
Now, there are actually 4 endings to this game. How many of them did you see?
I think I just saw the one, because I went through the one where I used, I believe, the chainsaw and the net to recover the fish.
And that's actually the only correct answer for the good ending.
Sweet. Well, I mean, I had the ending a couple of times where he just, I'm not sure if this is an ending or you die or reset, is when he fell into the lake. Is that considered, or the pond? Is that considered a game over, or is that considered a bad ending?
That's actually not a bad ending. It's the standard ending. You take a bath 3 times and you're just like, nah, screw it. I got better things to do.
Right. So I had,
next time, fishy. Next time.
Right. So under that, knowing that now, it was 2 endings that I experienced, I believe, because I experienced the fall into the lake or the pond too many times, and then also the successful, the what you call the good ending, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, it's what's actually best ending, because she gets to actually eat her fish. There's another ending in which you can actually get the fish. And this is the really bad ending. This is the one that lovely K1tteh over here got. In which you can make enough noise with all the shit you're doing out there, and you wind up attracting the attention of Warden, who sees what you have done, notices her prize koi is in your freaking mouth, and packs your ass off to the pound.
Oh wow! Did not get that ending.
I got it.
A lot more people than I thought got that ending. Actually, there were accusations for weeks after that game came out that there was no ending in which you could actually get the frickin' fish.
Oh wow! Well, I must have just dumb lucked into it with the combination of items I used, because I that was really my first go through the catalog and thinking, okay, how do that it's a frozen pond and the net makes a whole lot of sense for me to not get wet, kind of thing and stuff. Yeah. So that was all kind of what I had in mind. But yeah, it was I got 2 of the endings, and once I got the good one, I felt like yes, I can email him. I can email you back and say I have gotten through this. And to be honest, you mentioned it had taken me a while to play this since you originally sent it. It is like one of the only games I've played in like the last month, if it's not related to quality assurance testing or something along those lines and stuff. So
it's always fun to have one of those squirreled away back in a corner. It's one of my favorite things. But no, the last ending actually involves the catapult.
I got
the catapult ending. The catapult ending. If you hit the catapult after you've had 2 baths, it'll kick you back into the house, and your bowl is full. It's kibble, but screw it, you're not hungry anymore.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So all in all, it worked out for me in the end. And yes, So did you have much inspiration on these from older adventure games, Sierra Classics, anything like that? Like
to a limited degree. Actually, believe it or not, when I first hit upon the idea for this game, I was watching a DVD packed solid wall to wall with Wile E. Coyote cartoons, and all I could think was, ooh, I could do something with that. Let me think about that here. Scribble, scribble, scribble. Type. Ooh. If I can
as in just the different scenarios he's putting himself into to try to capture the Roadrunner, or like what exactly was standing out
That's
to you?
exactly right. Neko-chan, the poor little critter, wound up being our Wile E. Coyote to Fishy's to Fishy's Roadrunner. Only thing is that Fishy is actually much more interested in its own survival rather than just running off.
Right. And yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense for that kind of simple. I mean, it's not quite a cat and mouse game, but it's very similar where you're going, the prey is sort of has an upper hand or is teasing the predator, you know, in that situation. It's the animation style works for that, I think, because especially if you're the player, you're the predator because you're going, I really want to shut this guy up.
I'm freaking hungry.
And he's teasing me, and I just want to shut him up, you know, kind of thing. Like, it's like, I just, you know, like Roadrunner is classic. Wiley would just have such a satisfaction of capturing him because of just how many times he's been so close, and Roadrunner just sort of rubs it in his face. So I feel like there's definitely a satisfaction element to it as well.
Well, I'll be honest with you, the other half of that was actually Tom and Jerry cartoons, because it was the same damn thing. We have it
right,
and then the little spiel at the opening was actually cribbed a little bit from a meme I saw on the internet back in like 2005 or something like that, where we had a cat going, you know, where we had a cat's diary. It was a cat's diary and a dog's diary. You know, the dog's diary was, oh, kibble, my favorite thing, and a bunch of other stuff similar. Whereas the cat's talking about being imprisoned and absolutely convinced that the dog is spying on him for the jailers.
Right. So like just two entirely different perspectives coming from the cat and dog brains.
Well, even when you're dealing with a perspective for a fish brain, the fish is going, go away. I don't think so.
I actually have a version of this cat and dog meme.
Really?
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised. It's been around for a long time.
It's a version. It's not exactly as the old one, but yeah. It's more like the dog's day and the cat's day.
I think that was the actual meme I'm talking about.
Yeah. So then I have the old one all along. I had it for a while.
Well, like I said, I first came across it in 2005, and when it came time to, and I'm sitting there watching a Roadrunner cartoon after I've been kind of sitting back, kicking around, thinking, what can I do with this? I want to do something. Is this gonna work on this thing? Oh yeah, hey, there's an idea. Let's do that. It's amazing when you're trying to be creative in story terms, just what your brain drags out of absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, I totally understand that. You can get miles and miles out of something that nobody else would understand other than you, because of something that just you took in from some other influence, you know, whether it be something as simple as a cartoon or another game or whatever the case is. Yeah, the inspiration. That's really what it's all about. Is as creators is to take those little bits that you're going, what can I do with this, like you were saying, and then really fleshing it out and seeing what you can do with it.
I've actually, we'll talk about this other thing going forward some other time. But so with that, now I have to ask you the ultimate question. The reason that we are gathered here today. How would this game, as we see it, progress from I hand it over to you and we have our initial meeting about it to out in the rest of the universe?
If we did a commercial release especially for it, and that's okay, cool. That's what
where we're headed
to.
with it.
Yeah, so we would sit down and we would probably have a lot of tug and pull about budget, tug and pull about what can be what content can be added and what if anything like art or user interface, anything like that, what can be improved from its current state right now. I feel like as a beginning to end game, we'd want to try to expand on it a little bit as far as like how much time content there is time wise for the player. I feel like if we could get to where it was like 60 minutes to 2 hours of content on like a average playthrough, then all of a sudden you're saying, okay, now we have a commercial length. I mean, it depends on the replay value of a game, of course.
Well, this one was actually designed with the intent of having loads of replay values while you try and figure out what the hell's going on.
Right, and so I would just say let's come up with a few more scenarios, right? For the cat and the fish, or maybe for different, just different scenarios for the cat even, to sort of go through. We actually had. We had this issue with a recent adventure game that I worked on called 39 Days to Mars. And this was released earlier this year. I can't remember exactly now. I believe we released it in around April, but I might be wrong. I need to go check the store page just to be sure on that. But anyway, when we released it, we were pretty happy with where it was at content-wise. And our audience told us differently. They said it was a little short. It was about 45 minutes to 60 minutes on a playthrough. It was a co-op adventure game where you're two Victorian gents flying a steampunk raggedy ship to Mars, and it's just all the things that just go wrong between here and there. Uh-huh. And it's a really it's a gameplay wise, it's really critically acclaimed. People really enjoy the co-op puzzles, very, very like intelligently designed puzzles and all that. But the developer really felt like he had fleshed it out. The whole idea of this co-op puzzle mechanic, he really felt like he had fleshed this out entirely when we released the game, and people were still kind of saying. And people were just still kind of saying, hey, this is kind of short. This isn't right where we want it to be as far as the length. And so we were seeing we were getting a lot of positive reviews, but we were getting negative reviews as well on the Steam user side, which is very critical nowadays to a game's success on PC. So, or on Steam, is the user reviews that kind of come up in that top right area and tell you if it's mostly positive, mixed, all that. So we were compelled, and the developer was compelled to make an additional content update called the Additional Victorian Adventures that added in like a smattering of puzzles throughout the original campaign. And he was inspired to do those, and he felt like he could figure that out and he could do those, kind of in an honest way and actually create new content in a true and honest form. And people really liked it, and the reviews are going up, and that's heading in the right direction now. So that's something that we did. That's a good example of us taking a game that launched pretty well, but had an overriding issue that was holding it back. Mm-hmm. And the developer and the marketing team kind of collaborating, working together on pivoting, even post-launch, to improve the situation. And now we're working towards console releases with the full base game plus the additional content release as part of the console releases that will be coming hopefully earlier next year. So we're excited about that. And so that's an example of something that I would say, hey, let's test this with some folks that know quality assurance in a commercial adventure game. Even just like a nice and easy, low price adventure game that we were thinking we would have a discussion about what price you guys were thinking. I would say that this was somewhere between probably a $2.99 and $4.99 game, depending on the content added and if we improved art, like you said, like the backgrounds. If we were able to get new backgrounds and update those, that might change how we price it.
Well, right now, if I put $1 on it, I'd feel like I was overcharging people.
Right, and that's the whole I guess that's like where we're trying to get to meet in the middle is can we beef this up a little bit for commercial release? And if so, then we can offer it at a low price, but I think we need to find a fair price for the amount of beefing up you guys do. Mm-hmm. I agree that in the current form, you wouldn't want to offer it. It's a free game in its current form. I agree with you. But if you wanted to charge for it, then there's definitely, like you said, there's an avenue. There's avenues we can take to get it from where it's at now to where it's now a commercially viable product. Which if you look back at games like I think Binding of Isaac originally released as it was a premium Flash product, but eventually they redid everything. And the idea was that it had just gotten so popular that it made sense to do an update on the entire graphic setting, make it more of a just update the whole engine and take it off of like what was originally sort of a browser based interface and move it to more of a downloadable PC kind of thing. So anyway, and of course, every time a guy like Binding of Isaac, or a developer like Edmund releases a new Binding of Isaac release, it just gets a ton of sales and coverage because it's already done really well. And that, of course, games like that are going to sell well in 2018. You can overdo it. You can re-release too many times, or do the Game of the Year edition. If you do that too much, that will water things down for you. But some games.
Honestly, Eric, somebody needs to tell that to Bethesda these days. How many times and how many ways do you re-release Skyrim? Seriously, right. People.
And that's frustrating because
horrifyingly impressive. It was horrifyingly well received when it first came out, but after 25 different releases, we're all going, no, I'm not buying that again.
Yeah, and that's a frustration because you're just going, hey, I thought I had the definitive release, and you keep kind of pulling the rug out from under me on that, and that's really pisses me off as a consumer, and that's what AAAs and big companies they don't really care about that. They're trying to it's kind of a bottom line kind of thing, and so that's one of the things where indies if we're going to compete, that's the areas we do care about.
Okay, so I tracked down 39 Days to Mars on Steam. It was released on the 25th of April this year at a total of $15 US.
So I'm glad I was right with the April release date, because I was thinking that might have been a little bit early, but that was about right. And then we released the content update, I think in September. It'll say on the store page as well in the recently updated section when we released that.
Okay, July 23rd.
Oh, okay. So in July, so in the middle of the summer. So we were pretty quick on that because we released that in April, and within 2 months we had turned out some new content that we had no plan of doing whatsoever when we had launched the game originally. Which is
actually, as far as that goes, and from what I've seen from pretty much anybody else in my own work too, that might as well be turning 180 degrees on a diamond, producing 12 cents a change.
Right.
That is astonishingly quick.
And it's a hats off to Phil as well, the developer of 39 Days to Mars. He's a one-man just developing machine, and he's working on some new projects now, or at least one new project I know about. And we're still looking forward to the console releases and console ports of 39 Days to Mars. I think I don't know if we're official, but I think we're doing Xbox One and Switch almost for sure. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to get it's a really good co-op game with the controllers as well. So it's something that I want to get on the console as well.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I got curious now. Is it so unusual to release a game that the majority of users like them, the game, but they feel like there should be more content?
So it's
And sorry, my question was kind of unfinished.
sorry.
That you kind of, not that you missed, that you didn't anticipate this reaction from the public.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. You know, when you have a really good game or good gameplay mechanic, especially, that's, I think, something that you're going to say that's that's kind of something that you're going to, even though you can't anticipate what the response is going to be from the players, if you think they're going to want more, then you should, kind of quantify that as like a known unknown, which means like, okay, I don't know exactly what they want or what they're going to want, but I know that they're going to want something probably. So knowing that, you plan ahead and say, okay, do we have extra content in the pipeline, even if it's not developed yet, right? So have we conceptualized additional content that we could potentially make if the game takes off? So a lot of times you're just waiting to see if the audience or if the original kind of market likes it, because if they don't buy it very much, then developers usually call it quits right then and say that we're not going to do any more content, even if there's a couple of people asking for it. If the sales don't make sense, then you just don't do it.
Yeah, because at that point, you use the cost benefit analysis. Correct.
And so it's to me, the sales were going pretty, decently. It's tough. Boy, it's tough. It's tough treading in this market, or tough sledding in this market, I should say. Tough to get tread. And we were doing okay with that. We were getting reviews on some decent sites, and we were getting some decent video coverage too. Although you always wonder, we had to put an embargo on content, because these are puzzles that are you don't, when you see them and you solve them, you know how to solve them, and that's that. And it's like an adventure game, like you would not necessarily want for like going back to mobile food madness, you'd want YouTubers and Twitch streamers and all that to cover mobile food madness, but you wouldn't want them to cover that entirely, because then people would just be able to watch the whole game and they'd really have no reason to buy it at that point. If they felt like they had gotten everything they needed out of watching the video. So with 39 Days to Mars, we actually had put up an embargo that said you can only play video coverage can only contain the first 25% of the game. So that was basically your journey from your treehouse to your spaceship, to your rocket ship, essentially. So that left the journey to Mars and Mars itself to be uncovered by the players, by the actual people who purchased the game.
Well,
we felt that
with mobile
that was really important.
That wouldn't even be possible at this point. There would be no way to do that, not reasonably.
Well, what are you saying? Like people would just violate that and not care, or
well,
would you?
No, it's if you're thinking clearly enough, and you you do what, and they do what you did, and take a good hard look at the catalog, and they could come up with the best ending inside of minutes.
That's true. So you have to limit it to, you either build out new content. Like again, you have to think about it as a bigger product if we're going to do a commercial release, right? Like than it is right now, which means more content. And to me, that means, we show off maybe a side quest versus the main campaign or the main storyline that we're trying to eventually get to. Right. Things of that sort, things that basically sell the product without giving it all away, and then it's over. It's like, oh well, I've already seen everything. That's always a big concern with demos as well. You want a demo that entices, that whets the appetite, that gives you that feeling. Hey, I want to play more of this, but there's not, and I don't have it, and I want it. You don't want a demo that's like, oh, this is really satisfies me entirely, and I don't need to play the game at all. It's like the worst kind of demo, right? So you want to come up with a demo that just makes you say, like, makes people play it and say, this is great and I want more, and I need, and you've teased me adequately here.
And these, of course, will all be concerns for just about any game you want to try and do commercially.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these are things. I mean, there's every game has its own path, right? But there's definitely some fundamentals. There's always going to be the same 100 boxes that you want to check as a developer releasing a commercial release, on top of some really creative, individual, unique marketing plans and ideas as well for your product in particular, your development team or your entire team that you're working with. There's a lot to work with there that you want to be creative with too, but you don't want to get tied up with, oh, we have these really cool creative ideas and we're just going to forget to do the basics. That's something that can easily happen because especially because it's just understaffed is a constant, I think, in the indie development racket. It is such a constant to be understaffed. So you have folks that maybe it's just one marketing person or one person doing marketing and PR and business development and social media and all that. And they have to, their manpower is limited. They can only do so much. They're going to eventually start having to make compromises and sacrifices and saying what's more important. And so you better hope that you hired someone who does a really good job of figuring that shit out. Because if they don't, that's a real issue, because then you're not for sure taking care of the things that you need to be taken care of on that side of the bill. Mm-hmm.
So a game like Mobile Food Madness would suffer for having a demo, to be honest.
Only if it teased it right. So only if it gave you, the demo has to have a purpose. You don't just roll out a demo with an extremely small amount of content that isn't immediately engaging. If it's not immediately engaging, like it's just the intro, and the intro is like, it's meh. It's not like the best part of the game, and that's all we're going to give them. Then that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like to do a demo, it makes more sense to do like trailers and videos and GIFs and all that kind of stuff, and try to get people excited through different means. And then of course there's many avenues to take beyond just the demo. There's the go to do shows, do events, get feedback from attendees and other developers, and potentially, if you're at a big enough show, press as well. Lots to think about with that, and you want to generally have a long enough development and PR marketing schedule to fit in, at least a few small shows and hopefully one or two big ones. And how to make that cost affordable as well. There are different ways to go about showing, I should say, because in certain cases you want to play the normal game and exhibit and purchase a booth space and actually exhibit proper at a show. And in other cases, there might be ways to reduce that cost a little bit. Or you got to come up with an exact idea for why you're going to go out there. So, PAX West, for instance, that was a couple months, or that was a month and change ago in Seattle. And it's one of those big ones, 80,000 people across 4 days, lots of, eyeballs, big press are out there, all that kind of thing. So you have to kind of decide if you're on your own in a 10 by 10 booth, or if you applied and were accepted to be part of like a collective, like the Indie Mega Booth, which is, if you guys, I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the Indie Mega Booth or not, but if not, they're basically just.
I've actually been
okay.
You know what? I have every year for the last 10 been trying my little heart out to even get a ticket to go to PAX West.
Right.
It's just up the road.
It's a crazy show, and it's like, as you kind of have alluded to, it's hard to get a ticket for now, and it's really overcrowded. Downtown Seattle and the Washington State Convention Center is a nice space, but it doesn't have a ton of room to it. And it is so high traffic down there. I pity the Lyft and the Uber drivers and then all those guys now and stuff when they have to kind of poke their heads in there to pick people up and take them out and stuff. It's just it's ridiculous. It's so much foot traffic.
You know what I would do? I'll be honest with you. You know what I'd do? I would take my car downtown from where I am now, where the buses are. I would park my car somewhere undercover where it was going to be safe, and I'd take a freaking Metro bus into Seattle to go do that thing.
Oh, we could do our own podcast on the logistics of getting to PAX West. Absolutely. Like yeah. we could do like an hour plus on, okay, here's the hot tip. I would love to do hot tips on like a really specific podcast sometime for that. That's great. Cause I've done it like 10 years in a row, and I totally have like all these things that, you know, the Barnes and Noble's parking lot, if you can get in there, or parking lot, if you can get in there, it's wonderful. You know, you got to be able to pay for the space, but it's close, and you can kind of get in and get out. But it's kind of like it used to be everyone's best kept secret. Now it's secrets out the last couple of years, it feels like. So I don't know. There'd be a ton of stuff to talk about. But getting back on track, the idea of exhibiting like a big show at PAX, if you actually had a booth, you would have to just say, okay, like, you know, we're going to go all out for the attendees here. The last time I was or actually just this year when we went to PAX, and I wasn't, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't exhibiting properly at it, which was a massive relief if there ever was one, just to attend that event and not actually have to be, you know, peddling, 8 hours a day for 4 days straight, a demo product or whatever we're working on. So that was a huge, like, oh, okay, this is easy. But walking through the mega booth area, which is basically this huge corner now with dozens and dozens of booths, maybe 100, but a ton of booths all together, all indie development, or all indie developers showing off their games, upcoming games or recent releases. And going through it this year, it was so just packed and crowded. And there are pros and cons to that. I mean, the pros is that you're just going, hey, there's someone, there's people constantly available to get in the chair, to play your demo, to play, you know, whatever it is you're showing off. But having a conversation with someone in that space is incredibly difficult. And that goes doubly, that's especially an issue when you are setting up press appointments at that demo area as well.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Yeah.
You basically have to just have to show them through. Then there's some solutions like Michelle from, gosh, I can't remember their developer name now, Ska Studios. They actually had, like, she had a microphone system synced up. So she had headphones and a microphone, and then she would have you put on headphones, and you know, you would have a talk mic, and you guys could and it was like the headphones were really nice noise canceling headphones. And so a conversation could be had in that situation. And I thought that was kind of a really elegant solution to just the absolute den of madness that's going on around you.
I'll be honest with you, every place I've ever been in that's had more than 15 people in it just sounds like that.
Right. And so for someone like me, my voice is shot after maybe day 1, day 2, because I'm trying to go through a 30-second pitch or a 2.5 minute pitch or whatever, or not even a pitch, but just for Cook Serve Delicious 2, we were in Boston earlier this year for PAX East, showing at the Indie Mega booth, and you know, the demo wasn't quite intuitive enough for us to just sit people down and say, go for it. There was a few things that we kind of had to, you know, kind of show them through, talk them through. And boy, my voice was just ravaged after a day. And you have to get back up and do it the next day and the next day. I mean, it's an incredible endurance test to show on that floor. Especially if it's just like two of you total, as opposed to like 3 or 4 of you that can, or more, even better, to have some sort of schedule and break period and all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, it is an intense and exhausting experience that I don't know if can be replicated in any other way. I mean, it is something that you get done with when you're really, really done with it after the 3 or 4 days, and you need like a week to recover from.
Yeah, I bet.
And so anyway, my whole point to give you that kind of lowdown is to say there might be a better way if you guys have a different, if the developer has a different, what result you want or you have in mind for a show. So PAX West is a great opportunity. Unlike most smaller shows, PAX West is a great opportunity to get press, to get legitimized by press, essentially, or legitimacy through press. This is really hard. This is like one of the biggest things developers, indie developers in particular, are struggling with in 2018, is getting traditional press to say, yes, we're going to look at your game and we're going to cover it, because I think it's pretty obvious that most, because of how the market has exploded in new releases and all that. Doesn't matter if you're a YouTuber or an influencer on Twitch, or you're a podcaster that reviews games, or you're a site writer or a news editor for big sites. There are so many games coming out, and you are usually inundated with requests to play someone's game. We go about our marketing with that in mind. We know we have to give influencers and news editors and all that, weeks, maybe months in advance, if it's going to be like a full review, if they're going to review it in time for release, because they have a backlog that is insane, that if you are in the back of it, you can just forget it. You're probably not going to be covered, period. They're just going to at some point just drop you out of that back end of the backlog. So you have to have a game that not only kind of resonates with them in a way to say, oh, I'm going to shuffle you guys into the part of the backlog that I'm actually going to play, that I'm actually going to consider. And also you've given me enough time to get it done for you, to do it for you in a timely manner, and get you a review out.
At a point in time when it'll actually do some freaking good?
Where it will do some good upon release, or like ahead of release, or somewhere along those lines. So that in mind, I'm sorry I keep going on these tangents, but I think they're important tangents. But it's all getting back to the idea of, how do you approach doing a show? Well, if you just want to if you're like, our community is being built in a good way. We don't need a whole lot of QA testing. We believe we have a solid build. We're confident in our current build, and we don't need to have a whole lot of feedback on it from attendees. Then you might look into some other way to find a way to just set up press appointments, either on site or off site. And then, it's difficult to just say, hey, meet me here. But it actually, if you think about it, if you got one of those super expensive hotel suites, and they are expensive, they're anywhere between $400 and $800 a night around the PAX, the convention center itself. But if you get
surprising, you're going to be doing rack rate the whole way.
But if you get one of those suites that are sort of not quite on site, but right, within a half block of the convention center, you reserve that room, and you reach out to the press that are going to PAX, and if you get enough folks to schedule an appointment, then you have something viable there. You're paying under $1,000 to get hopefully 6 to 12, maybe more press appointments in. Hopefully you get maybe 33% coverage out of that, which is a big deal to you. If you think about it, for $1,000, that's actually not too bad. It's under $1,000. And if you do something like PAX Indie Mega Booth, you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars, especially when it comes to optimizing your booth. You can pay the cost of the booth space, and that's it, and have no other sort of costs towards improving the booth space itself beyond the bare minimum, or the idea of paper materials, handouts, other things of that sort. You can just say, we're not going to do any of those. But that seems potentially like shooting yourself in the foot, because you're visible to some extent, but you're not getting the most out of your space in that case. And if you're not getting the most out of your space, you're already spending several $1,000s anyway. So if you don't throw on an extra $1,000 or $2,000 on top of that to make that, and so then it just turns into a much, much, much bigger budget, versus something that says, okay, I can still get to this show, and I have contacts that I can reach out to see if they're available. And if that works out, then I'll do something like that. And I'll do something off site, but still I can get something out of. Can I set up meetings with enough meaningful people to make this trip worth my while? I think that's how people need to think about, or how developers need to approach big time shows nowadays. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to go, hey, we're going to go spend $15,000 on this and we'll see if it goes well. And
that sounds like a dumb idea.
And but it's commonplace though, I think. And I think it's a lot of times it's just because it's just a naivety, or being naive to the situation. You just don't understand as like a first time developer how to get the most out of those events. And if you're in a bad state of mind, you might just think, hey, everything's just kind of gonna happen for me when I go to these events. And that's not the case at all. You have to have a really intelligent approach to how do I accomplish what our goals are for the show. And that starts with you better knowing what the hell those goals are in the first place.
Well, yeah. Well, I should think that would follow just by its that's a train of logic that would follow just by itself.
But you'd be surprised at the keeping up with the Joneses idea of indie developers or any kind of event attendees or exhibitors, that they are saying, well, this gives off a perception that I'm doing well. And I mean, I don't want to say that there's a percentage that I know, but I know that there's a good number of those developers that are absolutely struggling. They're absolutely trying to, barely, not just maybe professionally, but personally as well, trying to make ends meet. And they think that this is a correct decision to do because it displays to others that they're doing well. And so that's like a psychological mind thing. You know what I mean? It's totally like a mind screw that you got to make sure you're not falling into. You don't just go to events just to go to them. You have to have, and because you're saying, oh, because I'm here, this satisfies this thing. If this isn't obvious yet, this might be like a personal realization of what I've been going through the last 10 years, right? So like in the first few years versus now, how I feel like, maybe I'm looking back at my younger self being like, hey, don't just go to those events for no reason, or just, by flying by the seat of your pants based, just kind of on instinct. And that's basically was my 20s anyway, right? It was just everything was on.
That was everybody's 20s.
Right. It was just flying, was just complete instinct, right? But like over the last few years, there's been a lot more, thought given to it. And of course, you have conversations with other people who are doing this, and you realize, holy crap, I might not be thinking about this enough. I might not be investing enough, time and energy and thought into the best way to go about this. And so I think that takes conversations to have. It isn't just, I mean, some people have it like naturally, and I worship those people. They're amazing and stuff. But a lot of us are, we muddle through and we find our way through trial and error. And that's something I try to help new developers with, especially because trial and error can be really costly in this arena.
And not just in terms of money.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for letting
going to this kind of big event. It requires also the entire mindset of the entire scope of where you're putting yourself in.
Right. You're going to have, if you're not ready to go show in front of people, or you think that you are and you're not, you're going to have some harsh realities to face when you go do that. Alternatively, there's also on the other side of the coin, there is the idea that I've seen this happen. In fact, games like this are a dime a dozen, my friends, is that the ones that show incredibly well on the floor, oh, this is great, everybody loves this game, but then it can't sell a copy on Steam. And there's a reason for that. And there's this sort of, I think there's on the show floor, when you go to a show, when you go to an event, when you go to Comic-Con or a PAX or whatever the case is, you're sort of you given to the idea that everything there is great and fun, and maybe that's not the case for everybody. Maybe not everybody thinks like that, but to me, I think people give more of a break to games that they play on the show floor. And I think if you think about it, there's a lot of distractions going on mentally versus me, like to have you demo one of my games on a show floor versus me sending you a copy. online for you to play at your own leisure. That's two entirely different things, right? Like that is you want QA testing for both, right? You want both situations to be thoroughly tested, feedback received on both those scenarios, because while it's really important that it shows well on a show floor, of course, and if that's the case, then you're going to benefit by being able to build more community out through that. But it has to also show well when people are just sitting around playing it at home by themselves. Otherwise, there's a I don't know if it's cognitive dissonance. I don't know if that's the right description of that. Absolutely. And it's a way that you think that your game is where it needs to be, but it's not yet. And that's what you get from the show floor sometimes, is that you get false confidence because there's a lot of positive feedback usually given, especially, that's another thing to think about, is that face-to-face interactions with people. Some people will give it to you straight. I've run into, the whole gamut of individuals. When you show at a PAX, you'll get everybody under the sun as far as personalities go. And some people will really tell you honestly and stuff, but a lot of people just want to be nice to you or say the right thing and all that kind of thing. And I think that's totally part of. Yeah,
I was just going to suggest that very thing. It's a lot harder to look. It's a lot harder for a lot of people to look somebody in the face and say, "Your game's shit, dude." And then they go home and they look at it and go, "Wow, game shit." And then they tell all their friends not to buy it.
Yeah, and for me, I would never tell anybody, even if their game was shit, that it was shit. I would because I feel like that's not productive to tell them. I mean, I would still tell them something. You need to tell them something, but to tell them that their game is shit is going to put them in a place where, unless you absolutely say you should not be doing this anymore for one more second, you should not be working on this for one more second. If that's the case, then yes, you tell them it's shit. Otherwise, you can't just tell them it's shit. You got to give them something on, like, you're missing A, B, C, and D here, man. And until you address these things, then we're not going to have anything to think. And then all of a sudden, I feel like developers, or anybody really, are going to be more receptive to hearing that their game is not good, right? Like that's like that like just hearing your game's not good, period, is such a devastating thing for a creator.
Been there, done that.
I think anybody has, and it's not just games. It's anybody who's done any kind of creative thing ever, to be told it sucks and that's it, and there's no constructive feedback on that. Like that's a challenge. You have to absolutely that is a challenge personally and mentally for someone to have to get through. And then, and if and you absolutely have to give someone who says your game is shit or your thing is shit, you have to give them some sort of due and say, are they correct? Because haters going to hate, but haters also going to make a good point every once in a while too. So you got to know that there's times when the negative reaction has something beneficial to pull out from it. Usually when it says you suck and I hate you, there's not anything to get out of that. But and this is no one in this room has said that, but this is something that you get commonly in like a forum type of situation with like a new game developer, or like they've released a new game that's something that's popular. Even the more popular it is, the more hate you're generally going to receive. So that usually, I mean, with conditionally, that means you're heading in the right direction if there's some haters hanging around and stuff. So
haters are fans too.
They usually they're not there. They're not there to hate on it if they don't care. So that's something to keep in mind, is that they don't care about what they're seeing or what they're dealing with, and it's something they care.
Trolls.
Well, it's not that they care about you, but they might care about seeing the improvement of the game, or seeing it being taken into a better spot. And you can't fault someone, even if their criticism is really rudely worded. If it is in effort to make the game better, then to me, that's where I come in to help developers that have, sort of prickly personalities that don't like to get necessarily the negative feedback, without it being vetted or parsed, put right in front of them. Right. Yeah. There's some developers that are just saying, this is my baby, and every negative thing cuts like a knife. But at the same time, they have to understand that feedback is the name of the game. Like you're absolutely the driver of this vessel, of this vehicle, but you need to listen to, different levels of the crew, and the crew goes all the way down to people testing and playing and buying your game and, having any kind of interest in it. So there has to be.
I tend to think more of the average player as a passenger, and believe me, the passengers get a lot more attention than the crew.
That's a good point too. I guess I was thinking like the Star Trek sense, and there was never any it was always crew, and very very rarely did they ever have passengers. On the because we're not that kind of vessel. So I guess I was just thinking.
Usually the passengers are a pain in the ass.
The passengers were always the pain in the ass because they didn't know how things worked, and they always just came on the bridge for no reason. What are you doing on the bridge? Get out of here! This is where this is where the magic happens. What are you doing here? So
no, it's I see your analogy. See, for me, your analogy doesn't quite work. And because it seems to me like what you wind up with when you're releasing a game is you have a whole bunch of people that are not involved in any real way with the way the thing developed, or all of the other silliness that went with it, unless they were of course part of the beta test crew, and then they're just the lowest. They're probably at that point they're kind of the lowest level of actual input. But people that didn't have any input. It's more like a cruise ship.
Yeah. I will totally agree to you on that, especially when it comes to this is a 1.0 release that the consumers of this game are not going to be playing until it's 1.0, especially. Then the cruise ship analogy beats down my Star Trek analogy entirely.
Don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely a fan of your Star Trek analogy, but it just doesn't seem to work right here.
The only way it works, I think, is in the early access sense, right? And the idea that even though even then maybe it is the it would be so. This is where if it's only in the early access sense does it kind of work, where maybe it kind of doesn't work in any of these senses, because it would be like on a cruise ship. Someone coming up and being like, yeah, but let me tell you how to pilot this right here, or let me tell you how to steer. Yeah. And you're going, no. And no. So you have you have to take feedback from people who do not have the same expertise levels as you, as long as the feedback is somehow viable, right? If it's not viable, then you can completely say, okay, great, it's in the trash can. There's nothing to be done there. So that in mind, I think the cruise ship is totally the case with 1.0, but with the early access, it gets muddled at that point. It's like, what is it? Because it's like, we're going to start as passengers, but we're going to graduate. Some of us are going to graduate anyway to, like you say, ensigns or whatever, like the lowest form of the crew on the ship.
Seaman.
And we're going to have. Yeah, we're going to have input, and we're going to say this and that. So I mean it's a lot to think about. You definitely want to have the input from whether it be your passengers or your lowest level of crew. You need to be getting in a game development sense, in releasing a game sense. Those people you need to have the feedback from those kind of folks, and preferably pre-release, so that you can pivot, make adjustments as necessary, and make the launch as awesome as it can be. Right? You don't want to miss launch in any major way, and you don't want to miss the boat in any major way out with launch. You want to say we got all the feedback that we needed to properly make this game and the marketing plan around this game as best as it could possibly be heading into it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was with that too. The other reason I like the cruise ship analogy better is because every passenger absolutely insists that he's the admiral.
No, that's true. That's true. But it's all ceremonial. It's like, do you get it's like is that person? There's got to be like 1 in 1,000 that's like, hey, Admiral, now I see nautically what you're doing here, but if we could just move it like, like 6 degrees starboard, like if the admiral would just crush that person, like would just smack that person off the boat. Like, and so you have, as a game developer, you cannot smack that person off the boat. Like that's the only thing I'll say about that, is that you cannot say that when even if your expertise is way better than theirs, way beyond theirs, you still have to listen to what they have to say. And probably the admiral does. And he smiles and nods, right?
He smiles and nods and then ignores your ass.
Right.
They absolutely. I've had some passengers over the about 15 or so of these I've actually done, or 15 little visual novel things that I've actually done. Mm-hmm. Who will tell me to go kill myself because they don't like the way I place a word, one word. And those people can fuck off, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, anybody who goes right away to suggesting suicide to someone, or anything that just is just like the lack of empathy in a statement like that. You just don't, like you said, you don't give the time of day to those kind of folks. You just got to move forward.
Blow them off because I missed an apostrophe. Great, that I can fix. I'm not going to do what you're asking though, because you're being an ass.
Oh, totally.
I'll fix the apostrophe, but you're stuck.
Yeah, I mean, the only way I could think that is something that you have to worry about is if everybody was just screaming at you, and then it's like, okay, well, what are they all saying? If what they're saying I can improve upon, I'll do it. If you're saying things like, again, if it's just trolling, if it's saying something that's just hurtful, again, there's no
reason to pay attention.
There's no time for that. Yeah, I don't have time for that, and mentally, I can't exhaust myself dealing with that kind of stuff. So, there's other things to mentally exhaust ourselves on that are much more productive. So.
Well, yeah, writing quality is a good place to start. I actually, for one game I did, God, 7 or 8 years ago now. 6, might have been 6. They went to the trouble of putting together a critique in a whole 2 lines. Writing sucks, KYS. I was like, what?
Wow.
What am I supposed to do with that? And I asked the guy, and he said, I already told you, KYS. Okay, whatever.
Nice input. Yeah, very productive.
That's incredibly productive. Yeah, I'll just get right on that, shall I? How about in the meantime, have a download of a copy that I'd already been working on the writing quality for.
This is like a common human thing, I think, is that it's really easy to see and say something is wrong or is lacking in some means. But to actually express a solution to that situation is something that most humans just do not get to. They aren't willing to get to the point of where they say, hey, this isn't great, but here's some things that could actually turn it around. They just never get there. They just want to be negative. They want to, they feel like they're contributing they're making an actual contribution to someone by telling them that their thing sucks, and it's just not true. So, I mean, it's just that's the way I think about it. Is that like a lot? But there's just a lot of people that don't get over that hump and don't say they'll to me, like I even have people I work with that are like this. Some people will point out things in a really negative sense, and it's my job to say, okay, then what are we going to do about it, right? Like, because the first part, it only means so much if you're not going to come up with a game plan to figure things out from there.
Yeah. Well, and actually, if you go back and look through most of my content on YouTube, even the games I hated the most, the digital homicide games, freaking, the hell was that? Depression Quest, all those things. I'll tell you point blank, I don't like what you did, but I have yet to come up with a situation where I couldn't tell them why. or at least give them, a direction to start in.
Well, I mean, it's not always easy. It's not something that you just like, oh, I know what to do. And in my case, it's very easy for me to snap into that form where I'm like, well, here's what you need to do. Here's A, B, and C, and D. Here's what you need to do. And maybe that's not correct. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's correct. This is part of why I think when everybody gets in a big rush, why you can make a bad decision is procrastination at times is critical. You have to let things marinate in your mind. You have to think about things a little bit more than just an auto reaction to, okay, this is wrong, here's how to fix it. That works sometimes, but there's other times where it's like, here's a very complex issue or situation that we need to solve. Let's talk about this in a couple of days and see how we think about it then.
Let's let it stew for a week or so, and then we're gonna go, and then we'll go back and look at it and go, yeah, maybe that wasn't so good. There's some hard tasks. There's some tasks that you'll get on your list that you'll just want to shy away from, and that's not what I'm necessarily talking about. Those ones you do want to face head on, tackle. Any task that gives you doom or gloom to it, just go tackle it. Like, go take it out, get rid of it, and get it off your list. But the ones that you're going, no, this is something that I can't rush. Those are the things, that are really, I think, important to say, let me not, I have things to throw out right now, but I will have better, more thought out, a better, more thought out approach to all this if I can have 48 hours to think about it. And sometimes you have that 48 hours and sometimes you don't. Depending on what the situation is. We still, and I hate that we do this, but because we're we still want to stay in business and stuff. We're desperate enough to do it. We still work with developers who come up to us like, we have a release tomorrow or today. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, oh my gosh, how are we gonna help, and how are we gonna turn this around and make a difference? What now?
And unfortunately, and we're much better now than I think years ago when we didn't quite accept this. I'm much better now about pointing out to them, we can help you guys now to some extent, but it's not going to be as efficient and the results as successful as if we could have had, 8 weeks in advance minimum, or 6 months in advance would be something that now we're talking. Now that's a real schedule. A year in advance is like a dream come true, because you're like, okay, you're trusting us from the get-go, or at least the get-go from a business development standpoint for this product. And that's a big deal. Having that time to get all that stuff kind of thought about, figured out. You're not going to figure out everything just instantly. You're not going to just come up with a plan and say this is perfect. It's not going to change over months of time. So to just say, hey, we have a release tomorrow or today, help us out. That's like the first experiment attempt that I would have liked to gone through tens of times to see how things would have worked out. But instead, we have to basically just experimentally throw all the copy out, all the outreach out ASAP, and just hope that it hits, and that people are that the product is so enticing, so interesting that people say, yep, this released today, but I'm going to drop everything and I'm going to cover it, as opposed to, okay, well, I got this thing, but it released today, and I got 10 other things to do, and the next time I'm going to get to this is a couple of weeks. And like you said, the benefit of that is reduced on both sides. The influencer doesn't get as much benefit because the launch is past, and so the interest level is naturally going to be a little bit lower unless the game took off. That there's an exception for that. And on the flip side, the developer doesn't get that much out of someone covering their game 2 weeks after it launched versus the coverage coming in at launch, as we talked about before.
Yeah. Well, I know you were talking about backlogs earlier. We don't talk about my backlog. We just don't talk about it.
Like it's a unmentionable, right? Like, you just don't. It's not to be brought up because it's so bad, right? Like, it's so vast. Like, and I think everybody, is that the case?
Oh yeah, no.
Because I feel like there's everybody, as a consumer or as an influencer or as a press person, most folks on those areas of the industry, you got to think we're all in the same boat nowadays. I mean, there's just so many releases, and from those releases, even if you vet out the bad ones, there's still so many good ones. And that's so difficult in this current market, because while the market continues to grow in size, while there continues to be more and more consumers, those consumers, while they have, the population has risen for the total number of consumers on Steam, they're much more discerning than they used to be. They're much more, they are rightfully spoiled. They have the choices. They can choose the game that they want to purchase. They can look at the genre that they like and say, which is the exact game for my preferences, for my enjoyment. And there's a good chance that they're going to find something, maybe not like 100 out of 100%, of the time, maybe not like perfect, but they're going to find a game that suits them. And so you have to think about that like that. There's more gamers than ever. There's more people that can buy than ever. But at the same point, there's not this big rush to just buy every single game that comes out that's good. People are much more nuanced and much more niche than they used to be, as far as, hey, this is what I like to play. This is where my focus is. Some genres, like the adventure game genre itself, like you guys may be aware with Telltale and stuff. Like, the adventure game genre is peaks and valleys sometimes. Sometimes like it feels like some new champion of adventure games will come in and usher in a new era for it, and then that era will come to an end. And suddenly adventure games have a hard time selling as premium products.
And of course, in Telltale's case, we have one more problem, and they were essentially releasing the same game with new faces over and over and over and over again. Their engine was showing a lot of wear and tear, decidedly showing its freaking age. And
I totally agree with that.
Batman and Walking Dead and Walking Dead and Walking Dead and Walking Dead and Walking Dead. How many of these games can I buy? And it's all just the same game.
I agree with that. And it turns out that it looked like their business model as well, as far as how they work their employees, was just absolutely trash as well. So those came together to combine, I think, for Doom.
Oh, that was
them.
Absolutely a perfect storm. But with Telltale especially, you had people hanging around on crunch for 3, 4, 5, 6 months at a time. And yes, I actually talked to somebody that told me this. I went and did a mini interview kind of on the sly there, to kind of get an idea of what the working conditions were actually like. And I'm not going to name names. That's just rude. But you had people on crunch for months. People getting sick. People just burning out. And
it was all kind of under wraps too, although maybe someone was mentioning it, but it's like, it's a company kind of thing. You don't really talk about it when you're hired by that company. But once the layoffs hit, or how that went down, was it a week ago, 2 weeks ago now?
2 weeks.
2 weeks ago. Boy, the laundry came out, didn't it? So, like, I was on Twitter for maybe 3 days, 4 days straight on Twitter. There was a top tweet or something in my feed that was pointing out just another travesty of the situation.
Well, it gets better than that, because crunch time like that is a known factor in video games. People have been bitching about this for 15 years.
Well, the whole process. So crunch is not complicated, but it's been made into this sort of complex beast because you have the obvious, which is that AAA studios in general, not everybody. There's good AAA studios out there. There are good companies out there.
I'll take your word for
that. And there are also horrible indie developers and indie studios out there too that do this too. But their AAA studios in general did not see crunch as a failure, right? So this is something that indies have sort of rallied around, is the idea that crunch is a form of failure. If you, as a management of your company, of your product, whatever, as the management of that, if your staff is getting into situations of crunch, then you have failed and you need to fix the situation. That's not how AAAs think, at least in general. They don't really care about that. Of course, as you know, in AAAs, it's a very, what's the word? Basically, you can get hired and fired very quickly in that. So you're basically, if you're not in the higher management of AAA, you're fodder. And that fodder gets chewed up and spit out quite a bit. It gets chewed up and spit out with the whole hiring and firing. And the whole idea is once a game releases, if they don't have another project ready for that team, then they're done. That's it. They're done. And that's a really hard way to work, obviously.
And even then, even in the cases where they have another project ready for teams, they'll either break up the team and send them to different projects, which is way too frequent, right. Or they'll fire them all anyway, and then rehire them under different terms.
We could get again. This is like another hour and a half podcast, right? For the idea of how to run your studio or how to run your big company and all that. I think that that's its own kind of thing, definitely. But just the
I will say now that I'm with the indie guys on this. If you have to run people that hard to make a release date, then you did something wrong at some point.
Yeah.
And so the people where people get this wrong is where they don't give the credence to the fact that when you are better, and this is generalizing, but I think this is true. At least this holds true for me personally. When I'm not overworked, when I take my time off like I'm supposed to, and I don't mean my time off from work, like as in like when I'm supposed to be working, but literally just stop working after 8 hours a day and call that good, as opposed to just going into the evenings or whatever, like after I've already put in a full day. If I do that for myself, my brain works better. I'm more intelligent. I come up with better solutions for things than I would otherwise. Mm-hmm. If you continue to, and I've not been down the hellish road of crunch as far as other people have, because most of my crunch has been self-inflicted, and I think that's a different kind of, that's a discussion point on its own, is whether or not you're putting yourself through it or you're putting other people through it. Because if you're putting other people through it, then it's immediately no go in my mind. I do still see it as a failure on your own part if you yourself are personally crunching, but
you have no one to blame but yourself at that point.
I do also understand the idea of I'm doing the job of two people. My manpower is, if I do this, it's like you come up with something that says, okay, I have to do the work of two people in 8 hours or in a normal day's work without mentally just sending myself into oblivion, like in a bad way, not a good oblivion, a horrible oblivion, like a really like
burnout is a thing.
Like a really like just like your brain is not feeling good to reset for the next day. That's what burnout I think eventually does, is it starts to say every day becomes harder for you to look your work in the eye and do it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that people, I think a lot of people who just say, oh no, crunch is good or crunch is needed at certain times, that's what people forget or don't admit, is that you as a person or even as a studio, if everybody's crunching, will become inevitably worse versions of yourselves, like less efficient, less intelligent. And it may be gradual at first, but at some point, especially if it goes on and on and on, there are physical and mental backlashes, some of them irreversible, that I have either dealt with myself or talked with other people that have gone through similar kind of crunch periods and ongoing sort of crunch periods, whether it be self-inflicted or because of their company putting them through that. Mm. And it's so obvious that it's like if you're like, oh no, my company crunches all the time, I'm into crunch. It's like, well, then you're not really a humanitarian or empathetic person. Like you are not, like, you don't care about treating your, employees with respect And on top of that, you don't even realize that treating them with respect is how to get the best out of them, which is just shows how dumb you are. Like, you know what I mean? It just shows how close-minded or how like locked in you are to this one idea. And that's what's really frustrating about crunch is that people aren't even accepting that it's like you're doing it wrong. You're not giving these people the best opportunity to excel for you. And because of that, you know, I don't have examples, but I bet you could point to so many things on releases that had crunch related to their releases, or like or games that had to be crunched to get to release. I bet you could look at the laundry list of issues both internally and with the product itself that came out because of that situation. And not even just issues, but the writing could have been stronger. Things like just simple as that. Like those kind of things can come up when you have people under ridiculous, stressful deadlines, or, hey, the only way we're going to make this work is by going 12 to 16 hours a day. From someone who owns their own company and it's small and it's not necessarily game development it's not game development like itself, but it's helping out with the things around it. You know, I will take the failure of crunch as a burden on myself. I can never pass it on to anybody else on my company. I can't do it. It's not something that's reasonable to ask. So working in indie development for like 10 years now, I look at AAAs and then I read something like that about Telltale. I just shudder. I just can't believe it. You know what I mean? Like that there's so much disrespect for just your fellow human, your fellow humans. It's like bottom line business, capitalism, all that stuff, but it's the wrong way, man. It's not. I mean, even as a business person, I could give you the reasons why that's just the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah, I get that. I actually have two examples for you, on one of which was up against an incredibly hard deadline, and they wound up there was an immovable deadline. You couldn't do anything with it. And that was Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5. Their eventual solution was they needed a few more weeks to get everything polished up for the release to PlayStation 4 of all places. And what they did was they put the finished portions of the demo on the disc and called that the gold press, and spent the rest of the time that they needed, the last several weeks that they had remaining, finishing the freaking game. And from what I've been told, it was crunched pretty much the whole way through it. But their deadline was absolutely immobile, because if they had released even one day later, they wouldn't have the rights to do it anymore.
Right. So that would be the question that you answered for me right there first, was why is it like not able to be moved? And when you're in that situation, then you have to admit the failure of the situation, because even though it wasn't a known, it was still probably a known unknown maybe it was a known that, hey, we're going to run out of development time.
See, here's the thing. They actually knew in advance. They knew well in advance that this was going to be a problem.
Right. So it goes back to the fact that you're making your development team suffer because of your poor planning. That's all there is to it. Well, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree. But again, the way that whole project even got started was that they didn't even look at the license for years, had not realized they had the license. They had licensed for 15 years, laid down a whole bunch of freaking money, and then realized with about 18 months left that they paid all this money for something they weren't using, like, at all, and they hadn't touched it in like a decade. So,
I see.
Well, they forgot they even had a license. The other one was Atari and Driver 3. Now, that one was that particular one wound up being self-inflicted, because they were trying to beat, I think it was GTA 4 to market, And rather than give them a couple of extra months, kind of push it back into the next year, and miss the Christmas season to actually fix all the bugs, they crunched the shit out of these poor people for what was it, a couple of months. It was a whole big thing. Well, they managed to get a pair of magazines that were under the same umbrella to give them to give them 9 out of 10 scores months in advance, and then when the game finally released, it was complete ass handle. There was nothing to be done for it. Destroyed the franchise, which Ubisoft, I think, when Ubisoft got the rights to the Driver series, they turned into Watch Dogs.
Right.
It was called Drivergate at the time, and they went to some serious trouble to get every mention of it removed. Even on the Driver 3 wiki page, the only reference to Drivergate that exists today on the internet is a mention of it in the talk page. Because every time somebody brings up Drivergate, it gets reverted instantly.
Huh.
Now, if you want the actual story on Drivergate, go see. There's a whole video on it by Larry Bundy Jr. That's the name of the channel.
Larry Bundy Jr. Okay, I'll write it down. I've got about 5-10 minutes left, guys. I don't mean to just interrupt.
No. It's all cool.
In there. Okay, cool.
But yeah, those are the two examples that immediately came to mind. And see, in my little brain, it is absolutely abhorrent to intentionally release games in a buggy state and go, oh, we'll just patch it after.
Oh yeah, and that's from a marketing standpoint, that's a really dumb thing to do nowadays anyway, because Steam user reviews and their reactions are one of the key elements to having a good launch. And if you start off and I don't remember what game it was, but there was a game recently that
No,
it's not. I love that I was like, I don't know what game it is, but it's a game, and you just throw it out there, and there's like thousands. No, it's not No Man's Sky. It was very recent, like a couple months ago. But it got poorly reviewed on Steam, or mixed reviews on Steam, because of the fact that it had a minor balancing issue. Well, it's not a minor, but essentially the game was too easy. Like the ability to get 3 stars out of 3 instead of 2 out of 3 and stuff. You could make all sorts of mistakes. And so for 2 weeks, their reviews were just getting nailed in a really bad way. And it's like, oh my gosh, why aren't you fixing this? Like, you should have, not only should you have had it fixed initially, like you alluded to, Don, but you have to, if there's something that you didn't think was wrong and it turns out it is wrong, then you don't want to crunch, but I mean, you are losing money every day that goes by that you're not fixing that and showing the people that are reviewing you negatively, hey, this has been addressed. Because guess what? When people go onto your Steam store page in 2 days, the first impressions they get is a mixed review. Like, they see 40, 50 reviews and it's 50%. That's a big barrier for them all of a sudden to get past, to say, or a big obstacle to say, I'm going to purchase this. And so I completely agree with you, not only from a consumer sense, which is the more kind of just moral and ethical point of it, but also just from a business sense. It's completely stupid to release any kind of product on Steam if it's not 100% ready to hit the market. If it's not 100% ready to just get scrutinized and torn apart. And in the end, people love it. That's what you need to happen when you release it on Steam. If not, then you're going to have a very quick, swift judgment and a fall.
Swift death right thereafter.
A swift judgment and a fall. Right. That is the Steam release. 9 out of 10 Steam releases nowadays. And sometimes the judgment never comes because the visibility is an issue now. Like just getting exposure and eyeballs in the first place. Mm-hmm. is there anything you wanted to conclude on, Don? I'm sorry, I've just been kind of rambling all over the place.
No. It's all cool. We're definitely going to have to come back, though. I'm telling you, we got like 3 or 4 more podcasts this way.
Yeah.
Well, I really love getting a chance to talk with you guys, and obviously hearing what's interesting to you guys and what you think. I mean, a lot of this stuff, you start doing it, day to day for year after year after year, and some of it feels kind of like, oh, everybody knows this, and you're surprised that people don't. And in other senses, when you guys ask questions or mention something, I get perspective that I don't necessarily hear all the time, and that's good to hear as well, because that's good for me as well, because it makes me think about, hey, that's not something. I try to be empathetic. I try to think about, hey, how are other people thinking about this? How's this demographic or this individual thinking about this? But to actually hear it every once in a while is really important, because otherwise you just sort of make assumptions about how things are working or how people are viewing things. Just to talk to you guys about the Telltale stuff, that kind of thing. I think it's important to have those kind of conversations. So again, I really appreciate you both having me on again.
Oh, no, you're welcome back anytime, man. I'm telling you.
You really are. We love talking to you.
And
there is so much to talk.
Yeah, you're a freaking gold mine. I'm telling you, man.
Well, I talk a lot, so that's not a problem ever.
What I meant is there are so many things to talk about. Yeah.
Yes.
Covering it all in an hour and a half isn't possible. We just got to keep going.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And someone who talks a lot gets a lot out of working in the indie game marketing scene, where, like you said, anything's possible. Lots of different things to be wondered, like lots of different avenues to explore. Always experimenting. Always looking at new things to do. Because there's the old adage, half my marketing works, and I don't know which half.
Yeah. Oh, God, I've heard that one so many times.
And so, if you're going to be a good marketer, you have to come in there with a kind of an inferiority complex, and you have to want to prove yourself, I think, every time. You can't come into a marketing situation, even if you have 100+ Steam releases under your belt like we do now. I think that's right. But even if I could say that, I do myself a disservice by not going in with a little bit of an inferiority complex, saying, how are we going to actually show them not only that we work hard, but that we get results as well. So those are things that are you have to find a way to, especially if you don't get results, you have to show them every step of the way that you attempted to get them results, and you better have a good explanation on why you did get the results for them. That's something that's just like a constant thing I have to work with now when it comes to working with developers and stuff, because I want to be proactive. I don't want anybody coming up to me and saying, hey, this didn't work, and you didn't do your best, or you didn't do enough for us. So that's something that I can't take.
Okay.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Nobody likes to think that they failed. And
not just that, but failed when you could have done more.
Yeah. Or at least nobody is human, or nobody is human, I should say. But yeah, if you, my final thought of the matter here is it goes right back to the start of the whole crunch thing. If you think, well, crunch is normal, I'm good with it, I have to wonder if you're even human.
It depends on, because again, there's the boss giving the crunch onto his minions, and that's like the worst. But there's also the one where it's just like, no, I need to work this much. I absolutely think that if I don't work this much, I can't accomplish my goals. And you can think that way, and it's not, and a lot of people do, but it's a dangerous game you play. It's a rabbit hole that you can go really far down into, and then all of a sudden find it's hard to get out of it. So if you want to wire your brain for work 12 to 16 hours a day for 5 years, you might have some fallout with your brain later on when you have conversations with it about not wanting to do that. Yeah. So
I know we're running out of time here, but there are people that defend themselves saying that they work better under pressure. It's a lie that they'll tell themselves.
Oh yeah.
I think under pressure is one thing, which is saying, hey, we have a deadline coming up, and we're going to do our best to hit it within regular hours, right? Like that kind of pressure, I think, can be good. Because it's like, we're not going to go outside of ourselves. We're not going to extend. We're not going to crunch. but we do have a deadline upcoming that we need to hit. And so we can't be slacking around. We can't be like not having these conversations like right now, like we need to be having them in these meetings and carrying out good business every single day, right? That's good pressure. Bad pressure is, like you said, when you run against the wall and you're like, oh, we have no time left, and now we didn't plan this right, and now we have to increase the amount of time that we're spending working on this on a day-to-day basis, more than what we should be doing. And that's the bottom line. Is it more than you should be doing? Then you shouldn't be doing it. But
overtime pay.
And it's exactly, well, like, and that's the thing, is that there was
overtime doesn't pay. That's it.
Right. I mean, you getting time and a half or whatever. At some point, there's a trade-off there that, like you say, it almost like, it's like metaphorically, that won't pay off for you in the long run. And I do respect companies, few and far between as they are. I've heard, like, of these amazing companies, like one company I heard recently on Twitter that would not give you a promotion or a raise unless you did not work any overtime. So you could work overtime, you can do that, but you're not eligible for raises or promotions unless you have your hours in check, as they're supposed to be, 40 hours a week, whatever the case may be. And I mean, we can talk forever on this. I got to get going, but systematically, that's the issue, right? Companies need to systematically change their approaches and not encourage crunch. It's not cool at all to build a gym and a restaurant in your office if you think that just keeps people there all the time. Like, that's not cool. That's totally manipulative and awful of you. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. If a gym is a nice thing for people to have for, I don't know. I just like, I think, like, if it's like, honestly, if you're asking anybody to like live in a space where they work, like, that is a huge issue. If it's not like work from home or whatever, like, but if it's like, like live in this office space, that kind of thing, it's just mentally draining. And so it has to get back to what can't, like we mentioned, like I just mentioned with the Twitter, the thing I read about on Twitter about the office, or the company offering raises and promotions only to those that stay within their regular hours. If you work overtime, you're not eligible. And so that's like a systematic change that's going to actually tell individuals like you and me that, hey, maybe this isn't what the I'm going to kill myself for this company is not the best way to go about impressing your superiors. Yep. Which unfortunately I think a lot of people fall into, because superiors say, I kind of like that. And they're like, no, don't encourage that. Like, you have to you're not just encouraging it by allowing it to happen, but you're encouraging it by having a system in place that allows it to happen, right? Like not just you as an individual, but your company or the, businesses in general. We have to change some things, I think, if we're going to get to a point where, we're working more efficiently and we're not just churning people out. And the benefit, of course, of like working with your employees in a good way is that they will evolve into amazing, employees for you. Like, they might start somewhere and the whole point of hiring someone is to hopefully like lift them up and continue to help them improve and evolve, not to just break them down and then throw them away and replace them with someone else who has to now start over again from the beginning of that vicious cycle. So yeah, I don't know, just a lot we could talk about on that, but in the end, it's just about, like it's about like, it's not even having a heart. It's just having the business sense that running your people into the ground is not the best way to go about this.
All right. So I think we actually should be wrapping this up right here. We will definitely talk about this, about all. We can go off on a rant next time about that one. I doubt we've even scratched the freaking surface.
Right, and there's some nuance and discussion points I think that we could hit on as well. I don't think it's an echo chamber where we should just be like, this is dumb and there's no reason to do it. I mean, you pointed out that there are real life circumstances that call for it at times, whether it's, you know, reasonably called for or not, it's happened. So looking at those examples and, you know, kind of critiquing them and seeing what the differences are, that's always something that I think we could do in the future that would be of good benefit.
That would be a benefit to a lot of people, especially looking at things, from the point of view of the developers and not as much the business peoples. Because the business peoples, they all get to go home.
That's true, unless the developer people are giving them assets late. And like, you know, and they're like, okay, now you have to turn this around. Like anybody, I can tell you from experience that anybody in any corner of game development or related game management or whatever can be put into a position of you're like pressuring me to crunch. You're like, it's like I'm being put into a pressured to crunch. And so like that, it doesn't matter who you are. It can be anybody, and you have to be really careful as a company that doesn't like isn't like affecting different departments or whatever it is of your company. But that's really like when you have a lot more people. I think when you have like 4, 5, 6 people as part of the company, there should be fairly strong autonomy going on, good conversations going on, good, you know, everybody understanding what their roles are. And then if something's not working well, then there should be conversations about that, but never be putting people in position to suddenly have to just, anyway, we could go on and on.
We have been, actually. That's okay. All right. So we will get you back on here in probably a week or two, if it's okay with you.
It sounds, a couple of weeks sounds great.
All right. I drop me an email a little later on. We'll start working on the scheduling now, so we have it for later.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Again, Erik, thank you for coming. It's actually it's always a pleasure to kind of lose a couple of hours just sitting and having the chat.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how I felt at the beginning of this, and it's not changed now. Is that I really enjoy getting to air out some of the things I've been thinking about. Have conversations about some of these these things that we deal with day to day.
Any final thoughts from you, Kitty? We've been kind of quiet.
Yeah, I would like to thank Erik once again for coming up here and talking to us. And it's really, I think this kind of conversation should happen more often. It's really important to see all sides of the equation.
I absolutely agree, Kitty and Don. I really appreciate you guys having me on again. Thank you.
Not a problem. You are welcome back at any time. Just say the word. We will set something up. Because I know we've got just today we started lots of fun topics. So we started in one spot and wound up completely on the other end of the planet. But that's okay. That's what these things are for.
That's the Erik Johnson experience, really. So, I mean,
to be honest with you, that's the Crocker Squirrel experience too. Ask Kitty; she'll tell you all about it.
We will. We'll get on the tracks, and then we'll just end up somewhere else. But that, as long as the ride's fun, that's what it's all about. So.
Actually, our last time out, we did pretty well with the whole thing. So.
I probably let you lead me a little bit more, and this time I just went off on my own, and I was just being awful. So it's just like last time.
No, you're good. You're good.
Absolutely not.
We had lots of fun stuff to talk about. We have more. But we should do this again very, very soon.
That sounds good to me. Let me, like you said, let's email about scheduling. And I have TwitchCon later this month, so I'll be.
Oh, that's going on down in Cali, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll be in San Jose, and so that I may be able to squeeze in a podcast with you guys before then. But if not, then I'll want to do one once I'm back and rested up from that. So let's back and forth.
To be honest with you, we should do both of those things. You can talk. We can talk about what happened, what was going on the convention floor, on top of everything else.
Well, yeah, I'm absolutely game to talk to you guys about TwitchCon after I go for sure.
Oh.
So let's we'll just get on the email and whatever whatever works is good for me. You know, I'll just kind of, I do need to refer to my schedule a little bit before I commit, but
this is why we start talking about it sometime today or sometime probably actually tomorrow, and then go from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. I really appreciate it. I do have to run, so I'll talk to you both later, but thank you so much for having me on.
Have fun, man. Don't hurt yourself. You know how the rules work.
Yeah, all good. Take care.
Yep, you too. Alrighty then. So that was actually a whole pile of fun. What do you think, Kitty? Hello? Are we still here? I don't know if we're here or not. Oh, nope. There you go. All right, Kitty. What do you think?
Great interview.
Yeah. Actually, you know, it's honestly a thought at this point to kind of look and see if we can find some way to make him just a regular member of the podcast. that would rule.
Yeah.
Or bug his buddy Josh. That would be good too. All right then. I think you know, just having that input is just brilliant. All right then, folks. I think you know what, this one went on a lot longer than I'd expected. We're actually headed we're headed for the 2-hour mark right now. So I think we're going to cut this one off. I think now that Erik's gone off to go do his thing, I think we should probably wander off ourselves. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree.
Like it or not, we still have work to do.
Let's go do other stuffs.
Yeah, other stuffs. That's always a good thing. All right, folks. We will be seeing you. Do feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do all that sort of nifty stuff. We don't actually have a live chat today, so we're not going to bother with the links in there. But everything you could possibly want to know is going to be down there in the description when I finally get this uploaded, probably sometime tomorrow. All right. Between now and the next time we see you, be safe, be sane.
And let's keep making fun. Keep making games fun. I bought it.
Oh.
After 2 years, I managed to watch it.
All right. See you later, folks.
See ya.